Hey there. We hit our first goal, and now our next goal is to get to 25 subscribers. We're at 11. It's only going to take 14 more, and I will make a new splash screen. I don't like doing this stuff, so you would be putting me to something I don't like, but I'm willing to do it if I can get to this. If you want to help out, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button. I want to thank everybody for getting us to this point. I got a few months left that I'll be doing this. Unless I win the lottery or something like that, I'm just basically trying to fill some time. Uh, Subject I want to talk about today is we were taking a family member to the hospital. Uh, she had to get her blood work done, and she had just been at the hospital because she fell, and she's got really thin blood right now. And somebody brought up in the car that there's something going on with country music. And that's how this got started. And so the subject that I've got today is there are good people on the left that end up becoming useful idiots for some of the Republican strategies. And they talked about the country music thing, and I didn't hear any of this. I was going, so they may have got it wrong, but they were talking about there's some problems, and I think it has to do with the vaccines or something like that. And I go, well, the problem is, the fans, the country music fans. You can go back and look at what happened with the Dixie Chicks. There are people out there, and granted, some of them are part of the terrorist cult that is the Republican Party and the GOP and the NRA. And, somebody made a comment, because Republican leaders in Congress were like, they just found some documents at Trump's, it's just not that big of a deal. It's just paper, blah, 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 blah. Well, he broke the law. And I heard the same thing from this cult back in the day when Reagan was president, and it was a guy in the military, a member of the family, and he's just like, oh, what's the big deal? Blah, blah, blah. They broke the law. That's what the big deal is. They were in the Oval Office. They were representing. This is not some exalted kinghood that they became. He was president of the United States. He worked for the American people, and it's part of their oath. The oath they take when they take office, that they affirm, or they swear to God that they're going to uphold, that they will uphold the laws of the United States, and they broke them. Somebody in there broke them. I think because of his Alzheimer's, Reagan really didn't know. It was probably being run by his vice president or the CIA director, but they broke the law. Trump broke the law. And, aside from the fact that the Republicans are absolutely wrong on what could happen on this, but that's the topic that we're going to be talking about today. And if you got any questions, comments, if you got suggestions for topics, go ahead and put them in there. And I want to thank everybody for coming in. Again, you could hit that subscribe button. You could hit that like button. Now let's go ahead and launch this. I looked for the video, and I want to stress again, because the one person in the car, I brought up the Dixie Chicks. I'm like, well, you could have people in country music that are based, some of them might believe it, like the Toby Keith guy, the Red Solo Cup. They might be diehard believers in the conspiracy theories and the other bullshit on the right. And most of the time, those people are just beyond help. They're probably going to be like that until the embalming fluid gets put in. And I don't think there's anything you can do about it. I really don't. But some of them, they're not firm believers. They basically want to sell records, and they will jump into that bullshit both feet just to keep the fans happy. And then and it's kind of like the old joke, if you put a frog in hot water, he'll jump out, but if you put him in cold water and just slowly raise the temperature, they'll likely die in there. And it's the same thing, I think, with a lot of these celebrities. Some of them, they cater to this shit not because they believe it. Same thing with some of the, I've heard this said about some of the celebrities that are passing themselves off as fake news. They don't necessarily believe this stuff. They just want to make the money. They want to cater to it so they'll get the paycheck. Somebody made this comment about Rush Limbaugh, that if he could get paid to do sports, he'd dump his fans in a heartbeat. And in one of his court cases, Alex Jones, they told the court, hey, look, he doesn't believe in any of this stuff or something along those lines. He just does this. It's a character he plays for his business. And that, but again, whether it's true or not, that's what he put forward in a legal argument, something along those lines, because his wife had tried to use his radio show or his podcast as a reason for why he couldn't be around his kids because it was toxic and it was, it was harmful to them to be around somebody like that. Well, anyways, I brought that up. And this person is not a conservative. This person is probably a little more to the left of me. And when I brought up the Dixie Chicks, they go, "Oh, well, what they did was wrong. They were talking about our president overseas." And I go, "You're following a Republican talking point." She got mad, started acting like a 3-year-old. She stomped on the brakes, and and I'm like, if I really felt better, I would have wanted to drive at that point because she was just, again, she's got some of the shit that's going on with her family member and some of the other she's got issues, and that's what this is. But it made me think that this is something we should maybe talk about because I see it in other areas. And like at the time, you had somebody like Chris Matthews. It was the Iraq War, and he brought this up a couple years into the war. And I honestly looked for the stream and I could not find it. I believe we got to think this was like about 15, 18 years ago. I can't find it. I did look for about 15, 20 minutes. But when the war started and they were planning the war, the Republican talking points, and they used it on everybody. They used it on the media. They used it on protesters. They used it on the media when they covered protesters. They said, we can't talk about this because we're planning the war. It would be disrespectful and hurtful to the troops. They're getting ready to go. We're planning this war. They're readying to go over there. We can't talk about this because it would hurt the troops. That was the Republican talking or the conservative talking. Then when the war started, they did the same thing. They're, oh, we're in the middle of the war. We got soldiers over there. It would just be disrespectful. It would be hurtful to the troops and blah, 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 blah. And when they did that to him at a certain point, he blew up. He goes, okay. He goes, we couldn't talk about the war because of you guys in the buildup to the war because it might hurt the troops' feelings. Well, I'm sorry. These guys are probably going to be getting shot at. I think they're a little tougher than that. If not, maybe they shouldn't be over there. I'm just being honest. I think the military is a lot tougher than that. And if you think they're weak and they're all these, snowflakes, well, that's your opinion. I don't happen to share it. And he said, now we're in the war and we can't talk about it. And he goes, and what's going to happen is when the war's over and we try to bring it up, you're going to be like, well, it's over. What's the big deal? That's what they did with the Bush administration. As soon as it was over, they just dropped him like a hot potato and moved on so they could vote for the next fucking idiot that the Republicans put up, another businessman, another corrupt, this one was more a corrupt businessman. He wasn't just a failure. But it's like, yeah, they put this up there. And he goes, when the war's over, we're not going to be able to talk about it. And that was the talking point that a lot of people in and out of the media, in and out of the Republican Party, we can't, but they will just smear. They will smear a liberal. They will smear a Democrat whenever. And that was the talking point. And I told her, I go, look, this is a Republican talking point you got sucked into. And I go, it's fucking stupid. And that's when she was like stomping on the brakes and acting like a 3-year-old. But like the Dixie Chicks went over there, and there was somehow a feeling in the world or in the Republican circles that the rest of the world didn't know that George Bush was a fucking idiot. And that's not true. And also, if you read the Constitution, there's nothing in there that says that your free speech ends at the water's edge, ends at the border when you leave the country. Now, if they broke laws over there, which they didn't, um, and that's the thing. But it's a case of a liberal getting sucked into that. And then when that failed, then she's like, now she's, oh well, they're entertainers. They shouldn't be blah blah blah. Again, that's another Republican talking point. Now, I agree that if you've got somebody that's an entertainer, you shouldn't take what they say at face value. I really don't think you should. But like when you have someone like the Dixie Chicks who are saying something smart, then yeah, I think that should be welcome to the Discord. And again, if you don't want to buy their albums, that's your business. But when they got shit on by the Republicans, a lot of people went out and started buying theirs. And they eventually left country music because they got to the point where they would rather be a good American sticking up for our country than having to cater to the nut jobs and the cult members. And they didn't say this, I'm saying it. But they basically didn't want to cater to the people in the Republican Party anymore to stay a country music singer. So they moved out of the country music genre. They became rock or pop or whatever. And the thing that I'm seeing now, and I don't know how to get around it, but I see these people. They've done it in the past, and I think that's coming back, where they want to entertain term limits, and regardless of where you see it coming from, these can be attributed to Republican talking points, and we need to dismiss them. We have term limits, with the exception of Supreme Court judges, for Congress, for some of the state level judges, for governors, for the legislature. We have term limits. They're called elections. All you got to do is vote them out. That's all you got to do. So the idea that we need term limits is wrong. What we need are smarter voters, and these usually come from the Republicans because it started with Newt Gingrich's revolution. If you're younger, you can look this stuff up. But when they came in, they had like a voters' bill of rights or something. It was some kind of contract that they had with their voters, their supporters, and they wanted term limits, and none of these people were gonna stay past a certain point. They were gonna get term limits passed, and most of them stayed. Some of them didn't make it, but most of them stayed past their claim of term limits. They stayed. They stuck around. And they were eventually voted out of office. I don't think they ever put forth, if they did it once or twice. It was not the 80 some odd vote, and I'm going off of memory here, but it was not the multiple votes that they had to repeal Obamacare. Things they were really trying to do. They might have had one vote on it, I don't remember, but they did not try and pass it every week or every month like they did with repealing Obamacare. And so that was one talking point. And the other one that I'm seeing this week is they want to set some kind of a standard for for electing people. Like you'd have to pass like a mental screening or something like that. And the problem is, I don't think it's constitutional. I'm not a law expert. If you want to leave some comments in there, this I think might, depending on if you're going to bring in crazy conspiracy theories, but the qualifications for most of these elected office, members of Congress, the president, it's spelled out in the Constitution. You got to be a certain age and you have to have a certain citizen status. Like with the president, you got to be natural born. For the lower offices, it's different. You don't have to be natural born, but you do have to be a citizen to run for Congress. And if you do actually get them put in, the Republicans will probably be the first ones to challenge them in court and get them thrown out, just like COVID restrictions, things to keep us alive. And I got a feeling that, yeah, it would probably be legitimate to get those thrown out. I think where you have like because there is an amendment that states that if a certain person attacks the United States, that they can be banned from holding federal office, any of them. And so then the laws that come out, that they've used to try and keep like Marjorie Taylor Greene and some of the others off the ballot, those I think are legitimate because there's an actual amendment back from like right after the Civil War that cover those. But these things, the big damage they do is when people on the left follow them. People on the left repeat them. People on the left get behind them. Because as we've seen, like Ron Johnson, he's from my state. This is a guy that said he was only going to run for 2 terms and then he'd be gone, he'd move on. Well, he got in and he found out that he could pass a tax cut that would put about $5 million in his pocket. So he's not going anywhere. He's going to stick around. He's completely happy sticking around. And the these other ones, they're not going to pass this. But see, if they can get people on the left talking about this, if they can get people on the left talking about term limits, something that's never going to happen, you're never going to get the Republicans to vote on it. Hell, you can't even get one Republican in the Senate to vote on protecting kids in school from gun violence. They're happy to let these kids keep dying. There isn't one Republican so far in the National Congress that is willing to vote. There might have been a couple in the House, but they're not willing to vote on anything that will protect a woman's right to choose and have an abortion and protect them from the cutbacks that are putting their lives at risk for other diseases because, the doctors are worried they're going to get sued just because they gave them a medication to treat whatever they have, cancer or whatever, because it can also be used as an abortion drug. There's women that are risking losing their uterus or, one of them had to come back septic. They would not treat her for a miscarriage. They would not treat her for a pregnancy that was never going to happen. She had to wait until she was septic and came back to the emergency room so they could actually treat her. And that didn't have to happen. But these Republicans won't support that. That's why we need to get them out. But with these liberals, and a lot of them are on the far left, it's going to encourage them to either waste their vote on a protest vote. They'll either write in Mickey Mouse or they'll put in Hugo Chavez or whatever on there, and then the Republicans can maybe get that election close enough to steal, or maybe they'll get it close enough they can actually outright win it. And it's the same thing, where they want these qualifications that have to be met, these screenings that have to be met. What's going to happen is they're going to use that to talk people in the left into not voting for the Democrats. And they're hoping that it will be enough. And they're also going to get some third party people to run to maybe that Wang guy that ran. And in my opinion, I like the guy. I liked a lot of his messages, but he tried 2 or 3 times, could not get elected, and he put a lot of his own money into it. Well, it really comes off to me like since he can't buy an election, now he's going to create a third party. And by him doing that, and I'm starting to think he just does not care about America. He doesn't care about the future of America. He wants to be in charge. He wants to get in there into office. And when he can't, it seems like he's willing to create a third party and make it impossible for the Democrats to win and help the Republicans. I don't think he cares about getting the Republicans in, but I think his only concern is to actually get in there, get into office, and all the perks that come with it. And he doesn't care what happens if he fails. And I think that's dangerous. But just keep that in mind. People on the left, we need to stick together like they do on the right. We got to get some good candidates in there. We need everybody to get behind them, and we cannot get distracted on this crap and watch Republicans take Senate seats, governor seats, presidential seats. We just can't do it. We've got to stick together. We got to get a little smarter and stop falling for their tricks. And peace out, and I hope everybody has a great day.